Hi, Kirsten Lovett from Now Moment Journey. I'm a shamanic coach, and this is a podcast episode about 6 ways to receive spirit guidance. And that's kind of a generic, like a big, broad way of saying it, but there's a lot of reasons why we would reach out to spirits for help. Um, Maybe that's another podcast, but these are the 6 ways I've found that are ways to receive spirit guidance. So let's just start off with the first one because this is how it happened to me. You can travel to a sacred site or just any kind of transformational travel. You may hear people talk about, even, it doesn't have to be to another country, it could be to a national park in your country, wherever you live, because a lot of times parks are also known as sacred places. They tend to overlap. Of course, the more famous examples would be, going to maybe India or Nepal or Peru or, some of these places. Europe, of course, has plenty of sacred places. Okay, so those are just some examples. And generally, local travel can be less expensive, but obviously, international travel is quite expensive. So that's one barrier to um, kind of that situation. So that's one. Another way to receive spirit guidance, and I'll come back to these later. Another way to receive spirit guidance is to do a nature walk, which you can do depending on where you live. It depends on if you live in a suburban environment or an urban environment or rural. Um, it's going to depend on how feasible that is for you to, like for example, I live in a suburban environment, so it's not that hard for me to take a walk around the block. And um, some days it's harder than others to get into a really good meditative space or a almost it's not quite a trance space, but state of mind, but it's more of like it's a calm state of mind where I'm trying to kind of tune into the trees and tune into the wind and the elements and things like that. So that's another way. And of course, there's so many different ways to do this. Number 3, and this is very popular with a lot of people, the third way to receive spirit guidance is through dreaming. A lot of people have a very active dream life and receive guidance through just through their dreams. They could, the key then there becomes like how to interpret them, and how to, because usually the standard dream interpretation books that you see um, they don't really help when it comes to shamanic dreaming. And so yeah, and there's different ways you can do that. The fourth way I've found, that spirits communicate with us, and when I say spirit, I mean like, benevolent. Um, Sometimes they're deities, sometimes they're, just a variety of different kinds of spirits. Okay, so the fourth way is shamanic journeying. And you've heard me talk about this a little bit or a lot, depending on if you're, how many videos you've watched of mine. But shamanic journeying is becoming a little bit more, I guess, mainstream now. But it is kind of a mild trance state. Now it depends. There's different levels of it. There's some people who shamanic journey and they can get into quite a deep state, I should say. But in general, shamanic journeying is a trance state. And of course, it's supposed to be very structured so that there's a beginning, middle, and an end. The practitioner should set up sacred space, and it's something that you probably want to do. I always tell people that I journey with, do not do this in your car ever, or while doing something else. You want to be not doing anything else. You want to be sitting or laying down I think it's better to maybe be sitting or in some kind of, either in some people do the yoga pose or whatever, the meditative state, or just sitting in your chair. But you don't want to be driving because you are going to change your states of consciousness, and that's very dangerous. So you don't want to listen to a shamanic journey while you're driving, is what I'm saying, or a meditation, in my opinion. I just think it's not a good idea. So you want to be kind of in a place of, quiet. So that's number 4. Number 5 is very few of us can get to this or have had this experience, but the 5th way to receive a spirit guidance is because you just grew up in a traditional culture. Some people would say this is an indigenous type of thing, or a native type of thing, but I think a better way of saying it, because that encompasses, there's a lot of people who just grow up in a traditional culture. And there's a lot of things that I'm saying here that definitely need further explanation. So I'll just say that right now. Now, what I mean by this is the opposite of modern Western culture. So most of us, including myself, did not grow up in a traditional culture. Okay, so chances are, unless you are somebody who grew up practicing traditions with medicine, shamanic medicine, or anything like that, chances are you haven't done that. Okay, so that's kind of a difficult one to do. Number 6 is establishing an animal, plant, or stone spirit. And this is where this took many years for me to come up with this idea, because it was based on my own experiences with indigenous and other kinds of, traditional cultures that I had experienced as an adult. Obviously, I didn't grow up that way, but I was very fortunate to travel to Peru and work with and receive healings, and also get initiated into Andean mysticism there. And I still practice with my medicine bundle. But then when I got back to my home, which is in the United States at this time, there were certain things that I couldn't do because they weren't legal in our country. Certain things like coca leaves are not legal in the United States, and they're absolutely sacred to the Peruvians and to the Andeans. And that was one of many other areas of, and this is actually very common. You might find, if you're fortunate enough to either study with somebody who's traditional, or study with somebody who's received maybe a lineage or received a tradition from another country, or from an indigenous tradition, it becomes very geographical. In other words, the tradition itself, wherever it is very assimilated to its own environment. For example, if I were to learn something from Florida by some miracle, of nature, I was able to learn, let's pretend I was able to learn, from a tribe from 2,000 years ago here in Florida where I live. It would be dependent on the materials and the plants and the animals and the stones that are here, and not necessarily, it's not limited to those 3 categories, but those are 3 categories that I saw continuously come up. For example, in Florida, the palms are prevalent. The animals, such as the turtle, is prevalent. Maybe stone would be, there's different, since we're near the beach, there would maybe be minerals of sand, or lime maybe, or shells, things like that. Shells are very important here. So I'm just I'm hypothesizing based on maybe what I've read from 2,000 years ago as well, because obviously there's many fascinating traditional cultures, Native American cultures here. But that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's very dependent on specific geographic areas. Of course, you can adapt, and people are adapting all the times, like switching out, certain materials for other materials. If it's sacred to use one kind of plant, maybe, finding the nearest possible plant to that or whatever. But you can see the complications, and they're not impossible problems to solve, but they're complicated, right? And one of the things that I found was helpful is to just think of an animal spirit or one or two animal spirits, a plant spirit or one or two, and a stone spirit. And if I could zero in on those things for my own development, that was really helpful. And they're interchangeable. I mean, they come and go. Some people tend to gravitate towards animal spirits instinctively first because they are very similar to us as humans. So that's maybe something you could think about. But when I say spirit, I mean like you can't see it, with your naked eye. Now, when you can see that's where shamanic journeying comes in. Shamanic journeying can be very helpful for both seeing and feeling an animal or a plant or a stone spirit. So I'm going to leave it there for now. These are just 6 different ways that I think that many people can experience spirit guidance. And obviously, there was 2 of them that were dependent on where you grew up, which makes it very limited. And what time period and or what culture you grew up in, which will pretty much be a very small percentage. And then the other one was dependent on how much money you have in order to travel to sacred sites, right? So with those 2 out, the ones that are much more economically feasible are nature walks, dreaming, shamanic journeying, and establishing an animal spirit, plant spirit, or stone spirit relationship. And so those, 4 out of 6 isn't bad, right? So with that in mind, maybe what I'll do is try to do the next video about one of these things or 2 of these things so that we can kind of go a little bit further into this. So I'd love to hear any of your comments or questions, either for future episodes or questions about this episode or any other past episodes. These are a lot of these issues, especially with shamanic journeying and animal, plant, and stone spirits and shamanic dreaming, as well as how to honor sacred sites and things like that. And any other animistic and shamanistic topics are covered in great detail with experiential experiences at our Patreon at www.patreon.com/shamanic earth medicine. And it's with myself, Kirsten Lovett, and my sister, Marissa Lovett, who has extensive videos in shamanic dreaming as well. And she's, as well as shamanic journeying and many other areas. Dreaming in the 9 Worlds is one of her classes that is ongoing at the Ursa Major level. And if you'd like to check out our different, membership levels, you can join at $15 a month, and that'll get you into her class as well. It'll also give you a free monthly divination from either one of us. And the $5 per month is a chance to go to a monthly ceremony on Zoom conducted by either one of us. And like this past month, I did a shamanic journey to meet the tobacco spirit. So that's an example of a plant spirit. And I've talked a little bit about tobacco before. I will continue to talk about it, especially as a spirit relationship. And let's see, and then the $1 level, $1 per month, you get one video per month, usually in the Facebook group or as a live stream. So check that out, www.patreon.com/shamanic earth medicine. And thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon. All right.